Hi everybody, this is Miss Segovia and I want to run through a few important things regarding the forms for your tournament. So, every challenge has a set of forms that you have to turn in. We're going to just look at medical mystery here real quick. And so you've got like your official rules, and it goes through what you do and how much money you're allowed to spend. I can't emphasize enough, you've got to read your rules. That's how they score you. In fact, at the back of this, you've got your scoring rubric. Right now, I know we're in crunch time, and I know you guys are freaked out about getting everything done that needs to be, but go to this rubric and just do the things that earn points. If it doesn't earn points, don't waste time on it. The only exception are the two team choice elements, and these can be anything that you want them to be. And so if it's not already earning points, you pick two things that are super important. So let's say that, nothing in here is about costumes. So one of your characters just has this amazing costume that you guys made from dirt and rubble and newspaper and whatever you happen to patch together, and you just made it phenomenal. You can take that and ask the judges to score it as a team choice element for up to 30 points. You can even take like, if you have like an elaborate prop, but you did this like one really, really cool painting on it, you could say, forget the rest of the prop, just look at this painting, and count that as a team choice element. Those are the only exceptions to, like, if it's not on the rubric, don't worry about it. Not on the rubric, let it go, forget it. If it's worth 0 points, that's how much time you should spend on it. And there you've got your breakdown too, just to remind you what things are worth. Alright, now when you get to the very back, you have this thing called the tournament data form. This is what gets turned in the day of the tournament. And it even has a breakdown of how many copies. You need 6 copies of the tournament data form, 1 copy of page 3, 2 copies of a declaration, the expense report, team clarifications. You need to put together a team sign, which is super easy to do, and then bring any published clarifications. So in this form, you can type it on here, but I'll actually send you a separate form that's a straight up typable form. So here you could team name the Booger Eaters, whatever you are. Your team number starts with 750. To get the rest of your team number, go to the DI website and Teams, and I've updated it so you have all your 750 numbers. And then your school is Jackie Singley Academy. And then your grade level will either be secondary or university. And so most of you are going to be secondary, if you're university. This one goes back over the paperwork again, and then down here you can type in what you want to put. So for like, what is your team choice element? You could put painting on the bush at the front of the stage. So maybe you put like a little tiny elf house, and so write a description of exactly what you want. So the painting is made out of whatever. It is meant to symbolize something, just whatever you want the judges to know. Don't go too much on this, because the judges kind of have to skim it. Keep it short and sweet. Just get straight to that point. You can do that for element 1 and element 2. And then in part 3, you're going to get into more details about what your challenge actually is about. And so they're going to ask you questions about this when you get to the prep area right before you go on stage. And they're just double checking everything and making sure it's good. What's also nice about filling out this section is it ties back to the rubric and makes sure that you get the appropriate amount of points. So you're going to fill this one out. And part 4 is actually optional. I encourage you to do it anyway, though, because the judges sometimes will ask you about these things, so you kind of pre-think them a little bit beforehand. So they're easy. Don't worry too much about part 4, but parts 1, 2, and 3 are crazy important. So this one, you're going to need 6 copies of it. If you email your completed form, you'll want to go File, Save As, and save it into a document so you don't lose all your typing. You can do that, or you can print it to a PDF, whichever works best. Personally, I would tinker with it a little bit, try to save it, close it, open it again, make sure it's still working so you don't lose anything. But once you have it, you can email it to me, and I'll print them out and have them ready to go for you. you need the page 3, 2 copies of Declaration of Independence, easiest form on the planet. That's this one right here. You're going to put your team number, team challenge, everybody's name, everybody signs it, you bring it to me, I'll sign it, boom, done. Super fast, super easy. The one that's going to take you a little bit more time though is your expense report, and this one's also pretty important. And so again, you know, school, your school name, your team name, your number, SLEL, your team challenge, and then it breaks it down into clothing items, scenery equipment, prop items, common supplies, and trash supplies. And I believe it also does the math for you, so that's a nice feature too. With this one, what you'll want to do is learn how to manipulate it. And so there's this document called Rules of the Road, and what we'll look up here is the rules on the expense report. So it's on page 18, and through here it'll bump us up there. So you really should read through this whole document, but right now just looking at your expense reports, your team budget and expense report. So every challenge has a budget. If I go back up here to medical mystery, you can see that for this particular challenge, the team budget is $150. So whatever goes on stage with you should be valued at or below $150. However, there are some catches. Just like the rich people can cheat on their taxes, you can kinda get away with some honest cheating on your expense report. So you'll want to read through this to give you some more details. It also talks a bit about clothing. And so, you know, if you have costumes, you have to account for the value of that costume. But we don't want you going on stage naked. So, you know, the jeans and t-shirts and underwear and socks and all that stuff that you guys are wearing, you don't have to include in the expense report unless it's contributing to your solution. So, you know, if you are the white t-shirt crew and you're all wearing white t-shirts, then that's clearly a prop. You've got to include that. Or any hats or anything that you're doing needs to be there. You don't need to include any safety things. If you're in the tower challenge, the goggles you don't have to account for. If you need hearing aids or glasses, you know, if you're using your glasses to pretend that you're melting ants on a field or whatever, then it's a prop. But if it's there just so you don't go blind, then you're fine. Your scenery and equipment, any backdrops that you use, any chairs, you know, if you're building a frame to hold a shower curtain that you painted, those have to be included. And so those all get put into, on the expense report, into their categories. Clothing items that are part of your props, your scenery and equipment that are there in your background. And then what gets really interesting, though, is looking at your exemptions. And so this is where you really take advantage of things. Like audio-visual equipment. So sometimes you're going to see a performance come up and they're actually using a projector. And so you're sitting there thinking, there's no way that projector costs less than $150. And the truth is, it didn't. But if the projector's used solely to project, it's not a prop item. The character doesn't walk on stage and be like, hey, I have a handy-dandy projector, look at me. If they just take it and set it down, but you're using the image it projects, you can exempt it. You still got to include it in the expense report. You can put even here prop items. You can put projector in parentheses exempt because you want to account for it, but you don't have to account for the value of it. Another thing too is let's say that you have a musical instrument. And you want to include it in your challenge. Like let's say you play the violin, and in part of your performance you're going to use like the bow of the violin to bop a character on the head and then play yourself a little tune. Well, if you're using it just for the sole purpose of music, it's exempt. But if you're going to use that bow to bop somebody on the head, now it's a prop item. But you can actually account for a one-day rental of that prop item. And so if you go and like call up Music and Arts and say like, how much does it cost to rent a violin for the month? And let's say they say it's $60. Well, the average month has 30 days, so that's like $2 a day. And so you can just account your violin now for a one-day rental of $2. So you can save a lot of money that way. If you're looking at your trash items, You know, if it's anything that's just garbage, you know, paper, cardboard boxes, those count as zeros. Common items, like let's say you buy a big thing of spray paint to paint your backdrop that was $10, but you only use half of it. On your expense report, you can put for common items spray paint, and if you only use half of that $10 thing, now it's only worth $5. And so you can cut it down that way. There's a lot of stuff here. There's that one day rental I was talking about. You can give things garage sale prices. You know, you don't want to say that, you know, somebody gave this to me so it's free, but you want to account for the value. So if, you know, this shirt my grandma gave me and I'm using it as a prop item, how much would I pay for it on a garage sale? You know, and it might be, you know, $1, 50 cents. You know, be like me and go to really, really good cheap garage sales, and that's going to stretch your money a lot more. And so down here, this is actually on page 20 of the expense rules of the road, are all the cool value things and all the ways you can kind of work around the rules. And so really take advantage of it. The other thing I want you guys to definitely look at is general safety, making sure that you are not violating any safety things. You can't have lasers and lights or helium balloons. They don't really want you to have latex. An issue we've run into before is the foot coverings. You gotta have shoes on, guys. There's been many years where I've had to take off my own shoes, give them to a team member so they can perform, and I'm sitting there barefoot in the audience. Please wear your own shoes. This document is super important. You've got to read through it. You've got to check on what is allowed, what is not allowed, what keeps you from having issues. Copyright is another big one. There's rules in here and there. And then the last thing I'm going to hit on here are clarifications. So if there's anything that you guys are reading the rules and you can't figure out what the heck are they talking about, or do they mean this or do they mean that, you can ask for a clarification from DI. And so to do that, you're going to go to the idodi.org or destinationimagination.org, and under Team Challenges, there's a thing called clarifications. So if we go to what are clarifications, like I said, it's anything that you're not sure of. But then each challenge, you can ask personal clarifications, and if you want to do that, I'll show you that process. But you also need to be aware of the published clarifications. So let's say, for example, on target. You can click on that one, and there's a clarification. Somebody asked a question about the payload, and they defined what a payload is. So you need to be aware of this. This overrides anything that's already in your rules. You've got to be aware of these things because they might have changed something substantial. And so some of them will have like 3 or 4 clarifications. This one, for example, nobody's asked a big important one on medical mystery, so you guys are just going by the rule book for right now. You know, improv, that one's also clean. I know there was one in here that had like 2 or 3 clarifications already. Probably Monster Effects, because that's the tower building. Yeah, here they've already got 3 big ones, and you can see when they were last published. And you need to be aware of these things and make sure you integrate them into your skits. Alright, so in closing, you're going to want to work on your tournament data forms. Here we go to this one here. You want to make sure that we have these things turned in to Ms. Segovia before we go to competition. The 6 copies of the tournament data form, 1 copy of page 3, 2 copies of the declaration, your expense report, and then if you did any team clarifications, and then make sure you're aware of the published clarifications. Your team identification sign, that's listed in Rules of the Road. It's basically a sign that has your name, school number, and all that. It is worth exactly 0 points, but you gotta have it. And it takes you about 2 whole minutes to make it. So, I hope this information helps. I know it's a lot to take in, but that's why it's video. You can always back it up and watch again. Thanks, guys.